Hello everyone. I've been given the heads up that we can start, so here we are starting. It's very difficult for me to speak in this kind of context without wanting to say, good morning class. Today we'll be doing Pythagoras, and please get your books. Why haven't you got your books out? But I'll do my best to keep the teacher voice on the inside for tonight. Good luck, says my father. Thanks, Dad. Okay.
So I know it might look in a few minutes like this is a very prepared presentation, but it's kind of like our plans for next year. We've decided it's a good idea. We've committed to it. We've said yes, we want to do it. We're going to do it. Here we are. But there's been a bit of a mad scramble kind of getting things together. And it's kind of symbolic of our mad scramble at the moment to actually prepare for our journey next year. So yeah, that's a disclaimer just up front. So I'll constantly be glancing back just to check where we are and what kind of we thought was coming next. Okay, so we thought we'd just start with before we go into where we're going, where have we come from, what's a little bit of our context and history, starting with Joanna.
It should actually start with Adam because he was born first, but never mind. So I was born, for those of you who don't know, in Thailand, where my parents were missionaries. So they were working with a whole bunch of local churches, various ones at various times, and there was little Joanna and little Karis, my sister, running around being blonde little white children in Thailand and going to Thai schools. I think the reason this is relevant, well, it's relevant for many reasons, but the main reason it's relevant was I really got the experience of, number one, living in a place where I didn't always know what was going on, basically. Sort of go, why is this happening? I don't know. Let's just go with the flow. Oh, that's what's happening. So that was the first thing. And the other thing that I got the experience of was going to a really rubbish school. Well, it wasn't very rubbish. It was less rubbish than I think the schools that we're going to be working with next year, I think, based on the sort of balance of evidence. But basically, what I learned at school was not the sum total of what I learned by any measure of the imagination. Anyway, so then we came back from Thailand when I was about 12. I went off to Westerford, which is not a rubbish school, and I learned some more stuff, mainly about social life and how to have one. And there was some English there somewhere, and a bit of maths, and I did AP maths outside of school and discovered that actually maths is not boring and quite cool, which is relevant, because then I went off to UCT and thought I might like to study maths and English. And that's the point where I met Adam.
Right, so for those of you who don't know, I was born in Namibia and eventually ended up in George, where I went to school. I didn't quite have the same cross-cultural experience that Joanna had. I mean, no one ever has the exact same story. But it was in George where I was first kind of exposed to the idea of being interested in teaching and education. I think I started tutoring my friends when I was in grade 8. I started tutoring maths to kind of grade 9s when I was in grade 8. I started going through the grade 10 textbook when I was in grade 9 just because, I wanted to. When I was in matric, I had a kind of week-long boot camp for all my friends who were doing science during the finals. And at my house every day I would have a little lesson and we would have tables set out. And I think that's when the seeds were definitely first planted of I want to move in the direction of education. And then came to Cape Town, to UCT. We met when we were both in first year, and we had maths in common. That was the one subject that we did together, and we did that through all 3 years. So first year maths, second year maths, and third year maths. And we both started out not in the education stream by any means. We were doing, Joanna was doing a BA, I was doing a BSc, and kind of just general subjects. And it was only when I got into my third year that I took a teaching bursary. So that's when I was making the commitment. I'm going into teaching. And Joanna didn't quite make that commitment immediately.
So, students often ask me, I've been teaching for 8 years now, and students often ask me, oh, how did you know what career you wanted to go into? When did you find out? And my answer is not really, I don't think, what the LO teachers are wanting me to say, because I kind of say, well, I never exactly decided what I wanted to do. It was more a case of, well, I want to study English because that's cool. I want to study maths because that's cool. And then I studied those things and they were really fun and I enjoyed them, and wow, university, it's so awesome. And I think, did third year maths because Adam was doing third year maths, life choices. But it turned out okay. I had to study my butt off, but it's okay. And then at the end of our third year, well, basically we wanted to get married. And so we needed to, have money to live on. So there was that impetus, and I'd been tutoring all the way through university, mainly because I didn't want to waitress, and you get paid more for tutoring, and I'm quite bright. So it worked out well. It was a win-win. And so it was then at the end of your third year, people really start asking you that question of what you're going to do when you grow up, and you really can't put it off anymore, and you can't say, I'm just going to study or whatever. It's too late for that. And I started looking through the honors programs and master's programs at UCT, and I started thinking, these all look really pointless for me. I guess that could be interesting, but why am I doing that? I'd just be doing it to kill a year because I'm not sure what to do. And then I started looking at my skills, and my parents had sent me to a careers guidance counselor in my final year of school, and I started looking over those things, and I started looking at the world around me and going, what do we actually need here? Because my decision for my life shouldn't just be based on what I want to do, but it should be based on what the world around me needs. Otherwise I could just, go to the beach all day. If I can live, cool. It's not a very satisfying way of running your life. So at that point, I decided, let's give teaching a try. I think I can be good at it. I think it's useful for the world. My subjects are teaching subjects that are very much needed. So cool, let's give it a go. So I did my PGCE, and I was given the opportunity to intern at Pinelands High School while I was doing that PGCE, which was a wonderful opportunity because it meant I was actually, for the duration of that year, in the classroom. And I think some of you had the misfortune of being in my classroom at that stage as well. So you make so many mistakes, it's not even real. And looking back, I go, how on earth did my class even pass anything ever? But I found out that despite all the mistakes, this was something I was growing into. Every week that passed, I'd rush off to my mentor's classroom and go, oh, what happened? Something happened, and this happened, and then the next week, I'd be a little bit calmer. There'd be fewer crises. And I was going, oh, that's interesting. Gosh, now what?
Right, so although we did all our initial studies together, by the time we got to graduating and doing PGCEs, that's where things kind of diverged a little bit. So Joanna did her PGCE, the teaching diploma, a year before I did mine. And that was quite nice because it meant I also had an opportunity to do the internship at Pinelands High School. In those days, there was only one every year. So, yeah, the year after Joanna, I did my PGCE. I was the intern. I had a science class. And, yeah, after that, taught for a few years, full-time at the high school. Had grade 8 all the way through to grade 12. A smattering of maths, but mainly natural sciences and physical sciences. And after about 3 years, at that point I'd fulfilled the kind of minimum criteria for meeting the teaching bursary that I'd been on, and was kind of starting to get a bit antsy for doing some more studying. So I resigned with the initial plan of actually going to do an honours in particle physics, which was something, you know, that had kind of been grabbing my attention for a long time. But as the year progressed, kind of towards the following year, kind of my interest kind of dwindled in doing the exciting theoretical physics, very theoretical, not practical at all, kind of in the short term. And there was an opportunity to become involved in an education technology company, which is actually where I currently work, Siyavula Education. And I took that opportunity, so yeah, I ended up resigning for one reason and ended up leaving for another one. But I had the amazing opportunity to stay on at Pinelands, still teaching, still having a foot in the door, still having a genuine classroom experience, a real interaction with students for the past few years. So I've had this dual role over the past few years, producing educational resources for Siyavula Education. Siyavula means we are opening, or we are open, and at the same time still being in the classroom, still teaching. And that I don't ever actually want to stop. I've been very glad that I've had that opportunity to still keep teaching. And we'll have to find ways to make sure that still happens going forward, because obviously the relationship for the moment with Pinelands is coming to an end.
So it was during this time period, interestingly, that Adam was kind of semi-leaving the classroom, that I was finding my place in the classroom. And I mean, maybe it was just a bit delayed, but a lot of people go into teaching with this dream of, I am going to be a teacher and it is going to be fantastic. And as I've been reflecting, I think one of the reasons I've been successful as a teacher is I did not go into teaching with that dream. I went into teaching going, I don't know if this is going to work. It sounds really hard, but maybe I should try it. And as the years went on, I found that it was indeed very, very hard. But as I tried it, I think I was lucky, and I was blessed, and I don't know what all the things were that aligned, but that I fitted well into this role. And the more I got over the initial difficulty of how do you make a classroom full of children sit down and listen to you all at the same time and actually maybe even learn something somewhere along the line, the more I got over just that initial thing of, well, now they do come in and sit down and listen to me, the more I found that all the other aspects of teaching that maybe people dream of when they go into teaching and think it's going to be like from the beginning, those aspects start coming to the fore. You know, I found that I was able to have more input into children's lives. I was able to see the input that I was having into children's lives. I had a terrifying experience, well, we both did a couple of years ago. Well, it was good, but also terrifying. A child left at the end of matric, and he brought the two of us a very lovely gift, a very, very generous and lovely gift. And part of the gift was these 2 long letters, one to each of us. Now, Adam had taught this child in grade 12. The last time I had taught this boy was in grade 9. And in his letter that he wrote to me, he made reference to an event which had happened in my class, in which I was involved. I'd done something. and he said that was the best thing you could have done for me. And I'm sure you're waiting for the terrifying part, because this is the kind of story which you hope to hear as a teacher. The terrifying part was I had no recollection of that whatsoever. It did not even register. I had no memory of it. And I think that for me was when I realized this is a wonderful job. And a terrifying job, but a wonderful one, because I have an opportunity to have an impact on people's lives in ways I don't even know. Just by doing what I think is right, what I feel is right, what I pray is right, and what I hope is in fact going to turn out right. And sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't. But that's the job that I've had at Pinelands.
So I think that is enough of a bit of context of where we've come from. We're both passionate about education, but in a kind of realistic sense, not just in an idealistic, rah-rah, education is wonderful. I think we've got a little bit of realism and practicalities around it as well. So that's where we've come from, and now where we are heading. I'll kind of wave my hand every now and then when we need the next slide, because it'll just be a few words on each one. I think we've covered the why as well. Yeah. So where are we actually going? I know it's been on the poster, it's been on the newsletter and so on. So we are going to a little village in a way. So the village is formed around a regional hospital, Zitulele Hospital, and the village is called Zitulele. It is in the former Transkei, in very rural Eastern Cape, near the coast, and you can see it's about halfway between Port Elizabeth and Durban. Okay, so it's quite far east, and it's quite remote. Zoomed in a little bit. Some of you might have heard of Hole in the Wall and Coffee Bay, kind of popular touristy things on the wild coast. So it's right there. It's about an hour and a half south of Mthatha, about 90 kilometers drive. And zoomed in again, that gives you a bit of a bird's eye view of the hospital and the kind of scattering of homesteads in the surrounding area. There are a couple of education NGOs and medical and kind of healthcare NGOs operating in the area. Some are medical education NGOs, so kind of education around tuberculosis, HIV, maternity, and so on. So there are quite a few support structures in place, and that's kind of why people have been attracted to go there, because you're not going out into the middle of nowhere on your own. And we're not doing that either. We are very kind of safe people. So this is definitely us going out of our comfort zone, despite the fact that there are lots of support structures and people have gone there before us. Zoomed in once again, that is the place where we're going to be living. The building we're going to live in doesn't actually exist yet. It's going to be in the south, kind of southeast corner, southeast corner of that square. So,
roughly where that sort of grey patch is.
Yeah, so right there, they're building us a hexagonal-shaped homestead. So this is the plan. There are actually going to be two. I don't know who's going to be in the other one. And this is actually a really exciting project, the homestay project. So this might be one that you've seen mentioned, that there's 500 from 500 is their kind of, this is Axiom Education's fundraising campaign. We might have neglected to mention, we're joining a education NGO called Axiom Education. They're the ones that we're kind of partnering with. And they're doing a fundraising program to raise money for these homestay upgrades. And it's actually a really amazing program. Roughly the way it works is we are going to live in it and pay rent. And some of the rent goes to the family upon whose land the homestay is built. And part of the rent then goes towards the upgrade program itself to pay off the building costs. And then after about 10 years, the homestay itself belongs to the family. So they then have access to the rainwater tanks, which have been added in. There's virtually no electricity in the area, so they then have access to the solar panels and the electricity that has been kind of added in, and then can continue renting it out, or they've just got space for their own family if they want. And then there's an opportunity to keep kind of growing this and doing these home upgrades throughout the area. So it's a bit of a pilot project to see how it works, but it is very exciting. That's what we're staying in. I've been trying to plan fitting, a life down into quite a small space. It's in some ways it's bigger than we were actually expecting. It's about 9 meters across, which is generous actually. So, but still requires some careful planning to kind of fit everything in as kind of puzzle pieces. And the next one. Oh, I think that's the video. Yeah, okay, so there's a video coming up which is going to...
After living here, I don't think I'll ever look at rainwater and sunshine in the same way again. Even when I use a flushing toilet, it just feels so wrong. I live in a rural area in the Eastern Cape of South Africa. The house I live in is owned by a local family who live in the community. Traditional huts are typically round, made of mud bricks, with an animal dung floor and a thatched roof. The rondabo is divided into 2 bedrooms, and the kitchen and lounge area is combined. We also have a loft area for additional storage space. This house has a few additional features to make it even more comfortable. It has an indoor tap, an outside shower, a solar geyser, a car battery that could be used to charge cell phones, which runs off solar electricity, as well as a cement floor and a few extra windows. Our zinc roof has been insulated using milk cartons, which also helps to dampen out the noise from heavy rain. Many homes here do not have their own rainwater tanks. People would then have to fetch water from rivers, which often run dry when it's not the rainy season. Normally, we would pump water from the bottom tanks to the top feeder tank. The top feeder tank is also positioned high enough so water can be fed into our solar geyser. The pump we used is broken, so we currently bucket bath indoors and we fetch water from the tanks outside. Bucket bathing is a bit more time consuming, as we have to wait for the kettle to boil over gas. The vegetable garden also benefits from our bucket baths. A car battery is connected to a solar panel on the roof. On sunny days, we can even charge our laptops. Not a single drop of water is used in our compost toilet. We do not have a fridge, a television, or a microwave. The one thing I really do miss having is a washing machine, as washing your laundry by hand is super time consuming. Although rustic, this home really is beautiful. It has profoundly impacted the way I view water and energy consumption. One does not have to be living in a rural area to change their norm. I really think it is such a beautiful place to live.
Then I think another video is being queued up slowly, just to give a little bit more of a glimpse of what our life might look like. It'll be rustic, but comfortable.
Interestingly, the family in that last video are making a bed and a table for us. So far, fingers crossed, we should have a house with 6 sides and a bed and a table. Adam reckons we're sorted and we can go now, it's fine. I reckon we might want a few more details in place before January comes, but you know, I think maybe there's a compromise somewhere between those two options. So we thought you might be interested to see that. Look, we both like our creature comforts. You know, we wouldn't be doing this, I don't think. Well, maybe we would. We do also really believe in, you know, going off the grid is fantastic, benefits to the environment, so wonderful. But what's important to us is the work there. So we ended up asking ourselves, if not us, then who? We're in a unique situation where between us, maths, English and science teaching, no kids, flexibility. If not us, then who will go to this kind of place? So Adam spoke about that already. Here's some photos of where it is so far. These do not fill me with confidence. We have been assured that this will totally be ready for us to move in January. We might take a tent as a backup. Okay, so fine. Let's get on to the education context, because that's why we're going. This is basically when you hear about South African education being a disaster. We did some coaching in one of those schools a couple of years back when we visited, and that's what it's like. This is not the worst classroom or the worst school, and they just happen to photograph it to make a more dramatic statement. Unemployment, 77%. What's the point of staying in school for that? Less than 8% of the people in the district have a secondary school education. 9% of households have access to electricity. 45% of students say they never have access to a place that is safe from violence or abuse. 45%. I know maths is not everyone's thing, so that is just under half. Not very much under half at all. I don't know which one's more terrifying, that one or the one in the middle. If you're a student in grade 9, that's already quite an achievement in this kind of area, but there's a 1 in 3 chance that you will still be in school in grade 12. If not us, then who?
The best thing about living here is going to Axiom and helped by the teachers of the Axiom. My name is Yonga and I'm 15 years old. I live with my mom, dad, and 2 sisters and even 1 brother. I sleep with a hut with my sister. We sleep on the grass mats on the floor. We do not have running water. It takes me 1 hour to walk to school, so I need to leave very early. There are many hills to climb. I walk with my younger sister. When it rains, the river becomes flooded and many learners cannot get to school. We are afraid of falling in. It can be very dangerous. I don't like missing school. I love to learn new things. My father encouraged me to do well in maths. When I am older, I want a good job. I want to be a teacher. I like to teach my sister. After school, I walk another hour to get home. The first thing I must do is wash my school uniform. Some learners do not go to school because their uniform is still wet. There are many young children in my community. Sometimes I help to look after them because I am older. We also have many animals at home. I must help feed them. At my home, we do not have electricity. We use wood from the forest and cook outside on the fire. I help my mom to fetch wood from the forest, but it takes a very long time, so I have less time to read and study my schoolwork. My parents do not work. There are not many jobs here. We grow some food, but it is very difficult. Axiom helped me to many things. I have great marks in science because of the teachers of the Axiom.
Axiom Education's mission is to raise student achievement in rural communities in South Africa. Our vision is to see the potential in every rural student, teacher and community realized so that every student leaves school with agency, purpose and options. In other words, that students have a sense of their worth and value to society, that they take responsibility for their learning in life, and that their academic performance opens doors to further study or the working world. South Africa's history plays out on a daily basis in our rural communities. Teachers and students face overwhelming challenges. In the village of Zitulele in the Eastern Cape province of South Africa, where Axiom Education is based, unemployment is around 80%. 9% of households have electricity, and only 8% of people have completed secondary school. Together, these and other factors contribute to an educational climate where success is very much the exception. Only 1 in 4 students who begin school here will finish grade 12. And of these, only about 2% graduate with a maths and science pass that will guarantee them a place at university. There's a massive gap between what exists in rural communities and what is needed to produce capable students. Axiom Education is working to close this gap at 3 different levels. Firstly, we work directly with students in settings that allow for more time and support, particularly focused on home language literacy and numeracy in the early grades, and on maths, science and English in later years. Each week, more than 1,500 students are directly involved in our programs, and we have over 50 alumni studying at competitive universities across the country. Secondly, Axiom supports teachers and school leaders to grow the capacity of rural schools to function effectively. We're privileged to work alongside some highly committed, inspiring educators in these schools who manage to stay motivated despite their circumstances. Finally, through research and advocacy, we contribute to solving some of the larger structural and systemic challenges that limit what's possible in rural schools across the country. For instance, many schools still face severe overcrowding with over 70 children in a class. And until these kinds of basic issues are addressed, there will always be limits to what schools can achieve. The challenge is enormous, but so is the potential to dramatically reshape the lives and trajectories of children growing up in rural communities. We'd love to have you join us. You can find out more on our website or follow us on Facebook.
Cool. All right, those 2 videos were just to give you a little bit more context than we can provide just through speaking about where we'll be working, what kind of students we'll be working with, and a little bit of a broader context of the programs run by Axiom. One thing we've neglected to mention is how we actually came in contact with Axiom Education. So from the second video, you would have seen very briefly Craig Paxton, and then he was the guy who was talking. He set up Axiom with his wife, Michelle, and he was the head of physical sciences at Pinelands High School just before I joined. So there was a brief intersection as I was joining for my learnership and as he was kind of exiting to set up Axiom. And this was about 7-8 years ago at this point. So that was the one point of connection. The other point of connection is they used to go to Claremont Methodist, which is Joanna's old church. So, and there are a few Paxtons around as well. So there are a few points of connection there. And over the years, Craig and I corresponded quite a bit. I would send him resources, when I'd created a worksheet or a test or a set of teaching slides, because I know good resources are often hard to come by. So we'd chat every now and then. And about 4 years ago, I first mentioned the idea. It's not easy to describe exactly where it came from, but the idea that I was being quite pulled in this direction of joining them in the Eastern Cape, in Zitulele. And he's very short, and I said, can we chat sometime? Because, we'd like to kind of explore this idea further. And his reply was very short. He said, I've been waiting for this email, which was very affirming. So we actually had a Skype conversation, and we decided this is something we really want to do, and kind of had the feeling that we were being called to do this. And for someone like me with faith that is tissue thin, to say that it feels like a calling is a big thing. It's not just kind of using that word lightly. And so the idea evolved. We spoke about it, thought about it. We went up to visit and joined one of their holiday boot camps that they have with their students.
It is very, very, very far away from anywhere.
So we visited and we committed to doing it, and for various kind of life situations and family things, we weren't able to join immediately. But that turns out to be quite a good thing. Over the past 3 years or so, we've both gained so many skills, both in terms of career, at school, in education, but also just dealing with life and difficulties, and messiness, and things breaking down, and things not being ideal, and chaotic households, and that kind of thing. We've learned a lot that will help us when we are very, very, very far away.
What I've just found amazing as this year we've kind of reconnected with this idea is when we said goodbye to the idea in 2014, we really did say goodbye to it. There were some quite serious things happening in our families, and we said, okay, not now. And we didn't think about it, we didn't plan it, we didn't plan what skills we were going to gain. But just to give you a list of some of the skills we've gained in the last few years, across our courses, we've been on 5 now. I've led my department at school. I've been involved with teacher training. I've had several more years' experience in both English and mathematics teaching. Adam's been working with his company to develop online resources primarily aimed at rural students. So when we circled back to this idea, it didn't feel like we'd lost 3 years. It felt like this time, the time's right.
Okay, so now just a little bit on what we'll actually be doing, kind of zooming in more specifically on what our roles might look like. And now is the time for me to admit that I'm a little bit of a fraud standing here, because I'm actually keeping my job with Siyavula Education next year. So it's been, again, a wonderfully affirming thing. They are willing to see how it works with me working remotely. So in terms of my 9 to 5, my role's not going to change. There might be some difficulties relating to electricity and mobile data and connectivity, but other than that, what I do as my day job, that doesn't change. Kind of the context in which I live is changing dramatically, and my weekends are going to change, my afternoons are going to change, but the actual work I do for my company is not changing hugely. One big advantage is that I'll actually be living in the context of the students for whom I'm actually creating resources. So we create these online maths and science practice questions, and as Joanna mentioned, they're aimed at, well, primarily students who do not have other resources, so that they don't necessarily have the best teachers, or any teachers, or enough textbooks, or the kind of potential for extra tutoring or anything like that. So living within that context, it'll actually be very helpful in terms of making those resources. I will be getting involved in their weekend program. So the one at the bottom, the Ekukuleni program, is for grade 10 to 12s. That is maths, science, and English, and just those senior grades. And yeah, that runs in the weekends and in the school holidays and kind of all the time. So I'll be involved there, while simultaneously still working for Siyavula. The other thing that's very helpful about that is I actually can kind of be self-funded in a way, because I don't need to find funding from the NGO, which is quite hard. It's very limited. They don't have a lot, so that actually makes it possible, which is quite amazing.
So I am not going to be working remotely for Pinelands High School. I'm being onboarded primarily for English First Additional Language. The students in that context, it's not really a first additional language, it's more of a foreign language, but they have to do a first additional language. And so a large part of my job is going to be working with that curriculum and working with their context to try and create resources appropriate for them. I will be working with Masekane program, which is the afternoon program for grades 6 to 9s, as well as the Ekukuleni program on the weekends. Again, primarily English, but obviously I'll be teaching maths. That's been my primary role at Pinelands, so they're not going to waste that. Next year, my primary role, the way I see it, is to learn this context. Especially working with kids in the first year. You start, but you don't get anywhere straight away, especially not with children from a completely different context. You know, if you or I bump into a child out in Howard Centre or whatever, we have so much shared experience. And when you talk to that person, although they're a different age to you and a different stage to you, you've got so much in common with them. Without that commonality, it's very difficult to teach. So a lot of my job in the first while is going to be developing commonality and learning commonality and learning how to connect again. I know how to connect with Pinelands students at this point, mostly. Some glitches sometimes, but generally I've got a pretty good idea of where to start. I have to start again, which is not filling me with joy, but it is filling me with excitement, because I think it's a very worthwhile project. I will also be doing some work for Siyavula. They've got a big textbook project, and again, that's helpful to help fund our lives. So I will be writing some maths textbooks on the side in 25% of my time, as well as the other 100% of my time. So, you know, life will remain pretty much as busy as it is now, if not busier.
Okay, so that's basically the end of the planned talk. There are so many other thoughts, ways of seeing things, inspirations and things that we just haven't kind of slotted in, or that we've temporarily forgotten about. We're in a very foggy state at the moment. But yeah, that hopefully gives you a bit more of an idea of where we're going, why we're going, some of the challenges we'll face, some of the exciting things we'll face when we're there. If you're wanting to find out more in the short term, or if you want to kind of follow progress in the long term, there are a couple of places you can take a look. Axiom has a website which gives rich information on all the different things that they're doing and a lot of their context. Specifically, I've linked to the blog that they have and to the homestay development mini site on their website. They also have Instagram and a Facebook account, so you can see kind of more frequently what kind of things they're doing. We are planning on setting up a blog next year as well, just where we talk about our experiences, both at home in kind of experiencing rural life, with students, education, kind of mini insights, that kind of thing. When we have that set up, we'll give Andre the details. So if you're wanting to follow, you can follow that way as well.
One thing we get asked is, how can we help you? How can we pray for you? So a couple of the things that just for now you can pray for us. Adam's just had a backup. Good timing, but that's why he looks a bit odd when he walks. We'd really appreciate your prayer that has worked and that it will stick. I don't know if that's the right word for it or not, but that it will stick and that he won't be experiencing the pain that he's been experiencing the last few months, especially as we are moving, etc. That we will be protected from burnout, from dangers. As you know, these things happen. And also that we will be given the grace to connect with people in a respectful way, in a loving way, but also in a growing way, in a way where we can help them, even though we come from a different context, even though the going will be slow, that by God's grace that will accelerate and that will be possible next year.
That's us done. We worked off the mic.